Hi, I'm Thomas Bowles, Prince William County Agricultural Extension Agent. Welcome to our video.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to this week's class. Today we're going to be talking about the spotted lanternfly situation here in 2023. Okay, so what is a spotted lanternfly? It's an invasive insect that comes to us from Asia. It's a member of the plant hopper family. It's not actually a fly. And although it looks like a moth in its adult form, it is not a moth. It's a plant hopper, just like katydids and some of those other leaf hopper type insects. It's very destructive of commercial crops. It has some potential to harm ornamentals, but it's more of a nuisance than anything else, and we'll get to why that is in a bit. On the good side, it does not sting, and it does not bite, and it does not transmit diseases. So spotted lanternfly has been around for a while. Came to the U.S. in Stone in Pennsylvania, and then about 3-4 years ago, we found it in Winchester. And since then, it has spread. In Prince William County, this is the latest hotspot map we have. You can see in the red, orange, and bright yellow spots, that's where we seem to have more concentrations than others. And you can see it's pretty much all over the western end of the county. We have spots of it popping up in the eastern end and mid-county. We're starting to see it in Fairfax. We're seeing it a little bit in Fauquier. We've seen it in Loudoun quite a bit. So it's definitely made its way east and south from Winchester. So right now, these are the counties that are known to have spotted lanternfly populations. Where it's red, VDAX has issued a quarantine, and basically what that means is that commercial traffic out of those counties, commercial carriers are supposed to be inspecting their vehicles, and there are a set of regulations that they fall under. In the orange counties, they are lightly infested, and while not quarantined by VDAX, there is growing concern that those populations will probably be exploding here in the next few years. The original quarantine was just Winchester and Frederick County, and then within a year, it was Frederick and Clark and Page and Warren and Prince William. So we've had it for a while, and it's a nuisance pest. And if you've got fruit in your yard, it's also going to be a damaging pest. So the life cycle of the spotted lanternfly, like most other insects, starts as an egg, turns into a nymph. There's a couple stages of nymphhood, and then it becomes an adult. And so here in our area, in the July-August range, that's when we're starting to see nymphs become adults. And the first 3 stages of nymphs, they're black and white. And then the last stage, what we're mostly seeing now in nymphs, are the red, black, and white ones. And then we've actually started to see adults in parts of the county. And so we expect that depending on the weather, we're going to start seeing eggs being laid sometime the end of September, beginning of October. And ideally, we want to kill as many of them as we can before we get to that October point. So this is from the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture, and it just shows the life cycle in a little bit more detail. And these nymphs, which are referred to as instars, you can see that, again, the first 3 are black with white dots, and basically the big difference is their size. And then here we are in August, where we've got the red with black and white spots on it. And so this is what the egg masses look like. And the egg masses are really good at blending in. Sometimes it just looks like a smear of mud. And so a lot of times it's difficult to spot the egg masses. but it's important to try and look at your trees to see if you can spot egg masses if you've seen adults. There's some lookalikes we have here. Eastern tent caterpillar, cankerworm eggs, gypsy moth eggs, wheel bug eggs, lichen. We've got a lot of calls about, oh, I've got eggs for spotted lanternfly. We go out and it's lichen on bark. And we've had some people identify Chinese praying mantis egg cases as spotted lanternfly eggs. But typically we're going to see the tight rows up in the trees. Sometimes it's going to have a covering on it so you can't really see the individual eggs, but that's kind of what we're looking for. And again, these are juvenile stage. They are quite beautiful bugs. They just happen to be pests. And then some lookalikes for the instars that we run into, the wheel bug nymphs, assassin bug nymphs, and oak treehopper nymphs. And I don't see them as lookalikes, but these are insects that have been reported as spotted lanternflies that commonly that really aren't. As I say, this part of the year, you've got that bright red with the black and white, which makes them stand out quite a bit. And then this is the adult with the wings open and the wings closed. They say it's a beautiful insect. It's about an inch long. It flies fairly well. The juvenile forms, because they are leafhoppers, will jump pretty well. But they do damage, and so it is an insect that we want to be concerned about. And with the adults, there are a number of lookalikes. Tiger moths, unfortunately, I've seen some tiger moths that have been killed because people thought they were spotted lanternflies. Oak leaf tree hoppers, buck moths, ornate bella moths, Alanthus webworms, and leopard moths. Typically, characteristic-wise, you're going to see that beige spotted primary wings, and then the black and white wings, and the red polka dot wings over top of them. The back end of the insect is, it's usually black, or it's black and yellow like you see in the picture there. And so why are they a problem? Well, they're sap feeders. And so any place that they can get to the sugars that plants are producing, whether it's through leaves, whether it's through stems, or whether it's through fruit. And they swarm feed. They're not like usual plant hoppers where you don't really see masses of them. You'll see a lot, but you won't see a mass of them together. With spotted lanternfly, you see huge numbers swarming together, covering trees. And so when they start feeding, they can cause oozing and wilting. In extreme cases, they can cause defoliation and dieback. With fruits, you're seeing a loss of yield or a loss of quality. You also see reduced cold hardiness. And in severe cases, you'll see plant death. One of the byproducts of this particular pest is honeydew. And so honeydew is basically insect poop. And it's a sweet, sticky substance that can get over just about anything. So in the picture you have there on the right, you can see that the top two steps are black and slick, and that's just all of that honeydew. And it will stain decks, it will stick to decks and siding and be really difficult to remove. And it will also encourage some other pests. And so let me see if I can get this to work. This is a video of them feeding. So again, we've got city mold, and you can see in the picture on the right, you've got city mold covering all of those leaves, basically. And it makes it difficult for the plant to photosynthesize because all those light receptors are now covered in this nasty black fungus. And when you've got sooty mold on fruit, it makes it unsellable, which is a big concern for producers. In the grape industry where they get it, you can tell that spotted lanternflies have been feeding on the grapes in the wine. So it's a problem both aesthetically and commercially. And that honeydew also will attract wasps, yellow jackets, and other nuisance insects. And so that's again for your average homeowner. That's another potential issue. The last thing you want, particularly for the kids, is a bunch of yellow jackets hanging out in your yard. So what can you do? One thing is to scout regularly. Look around your yard, especially this time of year. You're looking for the adults and those red instars or nymphs. And if you see it, report it. The county has a QR code that you have on the right, or here's a web address where you can actually report what you've seen and where you are in the county to help the county keep track of things. Ideally, you want to kill it on site. And then if you're leaving the quarantine zone, you want to make sure that you're inspecting your vehicle because these guys like to hitchhike and travel on cars, trucks, and trains. And so if you're inspecting your vehicle, you just kind of want to give it a look around. This particular graphic comes from one of the quarantine educational PowerPoints that VDAX did. But basically, you just want to look at the exterior, just make sure that you're not carrying any hitchhikers with you because they do love to hide on vehicles. When you see a spotted lanternfly, ideally you want to kill it with adults and nymphs. A lot of times that's to squash or smash them, although, as I say, they are plant hoppers, so they do jump pretty easily. So sometimes it's a little bit tricky to get them. Nymphs and adults can be vacuumed. Ideally, you vacuum them into some sort of shop vac that's got water and some dish soap that'll drown them. But even with something like a dust buster, if you could vacuum them in there and safely dump that into some water with some dish soap, again, that will drown them and deal with the issue. Insecticides are an option if you've got really bad populations, but they do affect non-target species. Some of our beneficials. And if you've only got a few, insecticides are not worth the potential risk. With eggs, you can use dormant oil or you can scrape the egg masses. And I'll show an example of that here in a minute. You can remove tree of heaven, which is one of its host species, actually in Asia where it's from. Tree of heaven or lanthus is its common host. We believe that at some point in their life cycle, the spotted lanternfly needs to feed on tree of heaven. There are other hosts. Many of them are ornamental and even some of our native trees, but removing tree of heaven, we believe, will help quite a bit in reducing the numbers. So when you're scraping egg masses, basically what you do is you get some hand sand, a plastic bag, and some sort of firm card like an old credit card, and you put the hand sanitizer into the plastic bag. You put the bag just below the egg mass, and you basically scrape that egg mass and bring those eggs into that basket. Then you seal the bag, squish it around in the hand sanitizer, and then you seal the bag and throw it away. And that will kill eggs pretty easily. And here's an example of how you do it. Again, the upper center picture, you've got the egg mass. On the left, you've got your tools. In the middle, below, you're seeing somebody using a card and they're scraping it into a bag. And then on the right, you've got the egg masses being swished around in that bag of hand sanitizer, killing them. So as I say, there are preferred hosts. Alanthus is the big one, but there are over 75, or excuse me, over 70 plants that they will feed on. Unfortunately, some of these include grapes, fruit trees, and some of our hardwood ornamentals. So there's no way we can get rid of all of their hosts. But again, Tree of Heaven, we believe, is important at part of their life cycle that they feed on it. And Tree of Heaven is invasive anyway, so getting rid of that is helpful. So when we talk about Tree of Heaven control, that's a bit tricky. It is invasive and it can be difficult to kill completely. One method is called the hack and squirt method. And basically you use triclopyr mixed with glyphosate from about July 1st until the onset of fall color. And over-the-counter wise, a lot of our poison ivy and brush killer formula herbicides are triclopyr mixed with glyphosate. And basically you're spacing some cuts into the bark. You want to leave intact bark between them. And so you want to make those cuts, spray into those cuts with the triclopyr glyphosate mixture, and that will be translocated into roots. It may take repeated applications to get it to kill the whole plant, but basically every time you cut, that's when you want to spray. Don't spray into old cuts because it's not going to do anything. The plant will have healed by then. Basically the number of cuts you want, 1 cut per diameter of the tree with a minimum of 2 cuts. And this is best suited with smaller plants. Don't have a whole lot of stem numbers, and the stems are at least about 1 inch in diameter. You can make foliar applications, again, of the triclopyr mixed with glyphosate. Again, it's going to take repeated applications in this method to actually kill the tree, especially if the more mature tree. With larger trees, you want to contact an arborist because they're going to have the equipment to better make those applications. The last thing you want to do is be under a tree, spraying up a bunch of pesticides and having it fall down back on you. So that's a thing to consider. With any pesticide application, you want to read and follow all of the label instructions, both environmentally and for your own safety. We don't recommend cutting down trees because a lot of times if you cut down trees, the roots are going to send runners and it's just going to put up more trees. And that's why typically when we talk about Tree of Heaven control, unless you can pull up all the roots, typically we're looking at herbicide applications, unless it's a very young tree. Some additional resources. Prince William County has a spotted lanternfly page. Virginia Tech also has a spotted lanternfly page. And then there is the Virginia Tech publication, What Virginians Need to Know About Spotted Lanternfly from last year, that talks about the quarantine and what's involved in that for commercial businesses. We also have a management on best practices for spotted lanternflies in lawns and landscapes, as well as residential controls and for spotted lanternfly in Virginia. These publications do a little bit more in-depth about potential insecticides that you can use on spotted lanternflies. But again, it's important to note that these insecticides can have collateral damage to beneficial insects. So unless there's a huge population, we really recommend try not to use insecticides. And if you have to use insecticides, be mindful of what other insects are in the area. And if they're on a flowering plant, you want to ideally wait until after the blooms have already have gone away, and that way you reduce the risk of harming pollinators. So how they got here, again, they came as egg masses on stone. They hitchhike a lot on trucks and rail cars. We believe that one of the reasons why we have it, and it sort of skipped some of the other counties, is because of some of the rail facilities here in the county, and it came right from Winchester. Where we first discovered spotted lanternfly in Winchester is right next to a rail hub. And so we're pretty sure that the first spotted lanternfly populations came via the railroad. But you can see in this picture on the lower right, this particular truck has an egg mass. It was sitting around long enough for a spotted lanternfly to lay its eggs. And so that truck goes to someplace else, and it is there when it's egg hatch time, and spotted lanternfly spreads. So it's one of those things we really need to be careful about it, especially going out of the quarantine zone. Even as private individuals, we need to make sure we're looking at our vehicles. So if you're looking at tree of heaven and you want to get rid of tree of heaven in your yard, make sure you're actually killing tree of heaven. There are some lookalikes. Some of our sumacs, black walnut, butternut, and some of the members of the walnut family are good lookalikes. They all have compound leaves, just like tree of heaven. You can see they have different flowers. They have different seed pods, and they do have different different stem orientations. So it's important that you kill the right plant. As we've had instances of somebody trying to do the right thing, trying to kill tree of heaven, and then ending up killing the wrong plant. And this is what happens when you misidentify. This is a farm in Nokesville by a utility cut. And, you know, Dominion was thinking they're doing the right thing. They sent some guys out, kill all the tree of heaven along the power lines. Come to find out, these guys couldn't tell the difference between Ailanthus and black walnut. And all of the death you see there is black walnut trees that were sprayed with herbicide because they were misidentified. So make sure you identify the correct tree before you go about trying to get rid of it. And so there are a number of insecticides, as I mentioned. There are contact insecticides where you spray them and it has to hit the insect to kill it. All of these are highly toxic to bees and other pollinators. So again, you need to be really mindful. And this is one of those things where, again, if you have small populations, it's not worth the risk to use an insecticide. There's some systemic insecticides where you apply to the plant and it translocates up into all of the parts of the plant. Again, they're not very safe for our pollinators, and so we don't want to use them when plants are flowering. Ideally, we don't want to use them on flowering plants at all. And both contact and systemic sprays are not effective against egg masses. Bigger trees, you really need specialized equipment, and so you need a certified applicator to do that. Some management options throughout the year. You want to make sure that during the time when you've got eggs, you want to try and find those, scrape them, and destroy them. Generally in our area, by April, the egg masses have all hatched. You know, in February, March, and April is a good time to use dormant oil to kill the eggs. You can use what are known as circle traps. And basically circle traps are sticky traps. The problem is it's really easy to get non-target species, and those non-target species include things like songbirds as well as snakes. So we're kind of going away from that. And then again, we have the option of using a variety of insects if the populations are heavy enough to support that idea. So remember, in Prince William County, you want to report it if you see it. Understand that you cannot eradicate all spotted lanternflies. It's like Japanese beetles. We're just going to have to manage them. We're not going to be able to get rid of all of them. So we want to kill as many as we can, but realize that we're not going to get all of them. Eradication is just not going to happen. Research is ongoing, so we're still looking at different herbicides. We're looking at different biologicals. We're looking at different management ways that we can manage both our orchards, our vineyards, and our landscapes that'll be a little more, or a little less, I should say, spotted lanternfly friendly. So that's work that's being done both at Virginia Tech, Penn State, Cornell's working on it, University of Maryland's working on it, USDA is working on it. So lots of research going on, but so far we don't have a silver bullet to take care of them. Let's answer some questions and see if we can make some sense of spotted lanternfly.
Hey, Thomas,
Yes.
is there a particular level to look for egg masses, like on trees and outside structures, or are they the full length of the tree possibly?
They can be anywhere. They can be low, they can be high. When we were out at the Bristow VRE station, a lot of the egg masses we found were in the knee to chest height, or maybe a little bit higher range, but they can lay their eggs anywhere from the tops of the trees to down to ground level. And a lot of times they'll try and go where it is most protected. One of the reasons why I think in that picture I showed of the egg mass on the truck is that's a very protected area. And so instead of going high on the truck, they went low where it's more protected. And we saw some on fallen logs where it's kind of a little bit protected as well. So yeah, they can be anywhere, unfortunately. Well, as I said, this is something we're not going to eradicate. It's something we're going to be dealing with for years to come, just like Japanese beetles. We can't kill them all, although we'd like to. But this is, the more you know, the more that you're aware, and what you can do to reduce populations and keep them at a manageable level. And again, like I say, if you have low levels, try not to use insecticides because the potential for harming beneficial insects is pretty high given the pesticide options that we have. So thank you all very much. If there are no questions, we do have a lawn program. If you're having issues with your lawn, our Best Lawns program can help you. We'll do nutrient management plans for you and give you a customized lawn and fertilizer plan. Next month, or actually later this month, I should say, we're going to have another class on container gardening, and we look forward to seeing you then. The YouTube of this should be up and out sometime early next week. And in the meantime, if you have questions, or if you find spotted lanternflies and you want some control recommendations and didn't quite get everything down on the video, please call our help or email our help desk at mastergardener@pwcgov.org, and we're happy to do whatever we can to help you with spotted lanternfly and your other pests, whether they be insect or weed or disease. Thank you all very much for coming, and we will see you again next time.